Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host,
Michael Rearden.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
Hey, Michael, good. Nice to meet you.
Same. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Tell me a little bit about your work.
So I have spent the last 32 years being a community pharmacist. I own my own pharmacy, and I have had the privilege in one town. So I've had the privilege of supporting 4 generations of patients. And it wasn't all that long, well, maybe a decade ago, maybe a little before that. The drugs weren't doing it. And these people that I had known longer than my mother, I didn't want to get the call that they had cancer or heart attack. And we were all aging. So I started when I was 25. I'm 57 now. And so my practice, yes, I do traditional dispensing. I do traditional compounding. I consider, as a pharmacist, I'm a problem solver. But I really morphed into a lifestyle wellness pharmacist. And so the rest of my career is about helping patients not need medications. And so everything I do is through that lens. And, as a pharmacist, we're trained in biochemistry extensively. I just didn't limit that biochemistry knowledge and application to just pharmaceuticals. I started helping patients with nutrients, with food, and the hard one is the one that you're in, which is stress pharmacology, is what I call that bucket of chemistry and chaos that the body has to deal with is profound. And basically, love and connection is the way to help people be well. It's the most powerful chemistry we have to facilitate health is love and connection. And our healthcare system has pretty much extracted that out. So I'm just the ornery one that says I don't want people, my peeps, to be sick. And I've built a brand, and I've built a practice. And I really want the big game is that your grandchildren be healthy. They don't have to live on medications their whole life. And we live in a culture that isn't producing that right now. So I do a little bit of what you do is I coach people in how to craft their environment such that they have the health they want.
100%. I definitely can see that happening in future generations. And there is something that happens here, especially in America. And it's very different. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in Europe or anything, but any European, one of the things that they will notice when they come here is, number one, all the trees that we have. And then number two, when they go into the grocery stores, they see all of these supplements, all these vitamins, multivitamin, vitamin B12, vitamin C, all these gummies for kids and stuff. But they don't have that over there so readily. Is because they have quality food. They make sure that they're eating well. And we do have an obesity crisis here in America. And it's maybe because there's a fast food spot on every corner. It could be that, or it could be that we have fallen into this culture that our health can be supplemented by a pill or by a quick fad diet. What is your take on the mindset that many Americans are going through right now with supplementing their health rather than taking initiative toward a better health?
Well, you did a great job of summarizing that. I think, and I say this in my new book, that we have a culture that produces the chaos. I think culture produces health, good or bad. And the United States has been groomed to think that health is in a bottle and health is at the doctor's office. And that was a very intentional, strategic initiative by some Wall Street companies to groom consumers to start seeing the doctor is where health is and the pill bottle is where health is. That didn't happen in Europe. Because of the way they do health care, they have a vested interest in people being well. And so because it's socialized and it's a part of their culture that you have access to health care, the whole society embraces creating a culture that works better, right? And so You're exactly right. We live in a culture that will produce disease, and currently, and there's no way you can supplement or medicate that culture such that health really emerges. Now, you may be less sick, but you really can't completely support foundational human function with a supplement or a medication. It's just not the way the human body is designed or evolved. I actually think we've had the kind of catastrophic environmental shift that is species ending. That's kind of a big statement, but the environment that our bodies are immersed in is creating unbelievable disease. Now, that makes some people a lot of money. So unfortunately, we're not incentivized to do much about it. The good news is with the last decade of access to information with technology, people are becoming highly educated, and they just think it's kind of crazy that that's the only thing there is. So we're in the middle of a huge transformation. And like you, I support people in creating a new culture. And it has to be a culture that they can just immerse themselves in, that is, so they can be easily well. And I always say, if you have to wrestle it every day, humans don't work that hard. Our little minds get very distracted, and we just are like squirrel. The primitive brain, the lizard brain, will respond to urges and environment and fight or flight. That's just the way we're designed. So I always encourage and support and help my patients create an environment that they just get to immerse themselves in, and they don't have to fight it. And then in creating that new culture, what's amazing is a new level of function, a new level of health will emerge.
Mm-hmm. One of the things when I go on podcasts and I do some speaking, I don't do too much of this, do kind of here and there kind of stuff. And one of the things they ask me is like, you have very individualized coaching. I do some group coaching and some organizational coaching, but most of the coaching I do is individualized. And they say, there's a quote like, a rising tide is going to raise all the ships. So you should do this, more collectively, like, hey, this is America, focus on America. But I have found that when you can just focus on one, right? Like if you think of even micro schooling, how that's going to probably be the new way of schooling. These big class sizes might be good for college, but for a young growing mind, it is not. It is not beneficial for them. So when I look at helping an individual, we get away from the masses and we look at what the individual wants, because society is here to tell you everything in which it wants you to think and which it wants you to move. But what about you? How do you want to feel? Like, how do you want to live? And oftentimes is clouded. And even if you have a small group of people with different mindsets, it's very likely if someone's more malleable, they're going to adapt someone else's beliefs and ideals when they should be looking at their own. So that's why I focus on individuals. But you said something great, like we have to focus on the culture. And, I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you probably have, thought about this quite a bit. How can we begin to change the culture? Not, maybe not just only in America, but like all over the world, because, everyone has their vices. But when we can see the bad that needs to be changed, and many people can say, you know what, that needs to be adjusted. This can be better. Let's start to do that. For example, I'm not picking on anyone, but the Black community, where if we look at just the family system in there, an easy cultural fix is to ensure that the father stays in the household. How can we instill that into this, into the mindset, into the family, that family is important? So that could be a cultural shift in the Black community that enhances the Black community. And it's just a small shift. It's just like, hey, focus on family. What would be a cultural shift for health and fitness?
Oh, I love that question. And it's one that I spend almost it's what drives me. I wish I was more focused on money, because my husband would really appreciate that. But I'm not. I'm really focused on your great grandchildren. And it's a perfect, how do you change a culture? Well, I speak to a lot of pharmacists and my peers, and so I'm working that way. But one of the things is to define culture. And I actually think of it in a very scientific way. Think of a petri dish. So if you look at a petri dish, the medium with which you grow on, that agar plate, is actually called a culture. And so it really is all the things that exist in your petri dish that either supports your life and your function, or is toxic for your function. So one of the things I do, and I work with individuals too, because I think while this is a macro problem, most big problems are never solved at the macro level. They are solved at the micro level. So when I coach an individual, and my target coach is the chief medical officer of the family, which is mamas. Okay. So when the mamas get supported and they get educated and they get helped with the implementation of all this stuff, because there's plenty of people telling people what to do, right? What I know doesn't matter. It's what the individual knows and what they can routinely apply is where actual results start to happen. And in medicine, I had a patient once say, Kathy, doctors tell us to do all this stuff, but nobody actually helps us do it, right? And so I do what I call a cultural analysis. And we just kind of dig into their life. Now, you said a mouthful when you said everybody's different. Everybody has a unique puzzle, so to speak, that we have to dig into. And biochemically, if you just look at the genetics and how everybody functions, everybody's unique. Then you add into that their family structure, their history, their generational traumas, the stress, the movement. You put just a little bit of those pieces together, their current financial situation, their support system or lack of support system. Those are all parts of the medium with either supports them or stresses them. And like I said, I think of it from a very biochemical lens when I'm trying to assess. I look at pharmacology, which is all the chemicals that come in and the body has to process. I look at food pharmacology, which is enough of the nutrients to actually function or is toxic. And then, like I said, stress pharmacology is way harder than any of that because that does look at the negative stress chemistries, cortisol, adrenaline, all that. And I also look at the positive ones like love and connection and oxytocin, dopamine. So when I'm seeing a person's life, uniquely as a pharmacist, I'm thinking about how can I support optimal function at that basic biochemical level. I know it's kind of weird, but it boils down to nutrition and love and connection and oxygen and water and sunlight. Those basic, do you have enough of that for your body to actually function? And in our culture, the answer is predominantly no, we don't. And you mentioned it about the grocery store, and I'm speaking next week, and I was updating some slides, and in, I think, 23 or 24, they used AI to assess the foods, all the foods in the United States. And I was shocked. I don't know why I was shocked, but I was shocked that 73% of the foods that are available in the United States are ultra-processed foods. So 3 out of 4 opportunities you have to eat, you will eat something that kills you early or causes disease. Okay? That is not an individual problem. Now, we can solve it individually. We can make different choices. But the fact that the culture feeds us that way is a big problem. And so you really proposed, how do we change this on the macro? Well, let me tell you, my government officials know me. They know me because when I talk to them about pharmacy issues, I always end with this question. I said, at some point we've got to ask a better question. Why are we so sick, and why do we need so many medications? Why is being sick the fundamental state for the United States human beings? Because, like you said, in other cultures, it's not. Um, so, and that kind of scratched their heads. And so, how do you fix it? You fix it individually. You start empowering the individual. You engage them. You educate them. You embrace them and empathize on their journey. But interestingly, when you help that one person, there is a ripple effect around them. That ripple effect is the family, the spouse, the grandchildren. All of a sudden, they're planting something in the garden and they're having the grandkids come over. There is this ripple effect. And I actually think that's the way it's going to happen. And that's the way it has to happen. Enough individuals taking a stand for their own well-being and taking a stand and sharing that with the people they love in their immediate environment.
I do want to take a step back and I want to look at how we grow up, because when you're young, you're just kind of running around, you go to school maybe, and eventually you grow up a little bit, you're a teenager, you want to run away, you want to do all the things you're not supposed to do because you want to live life, right? You want to go out with your friends, you want to hang out, maybe you start drinking, maybe some recreational marijuana. I don't know how far down the slide you're going to go, but eventually you're living your life. Then you find adulthood at some point, and you spend a good portion of your time trying to find some meaning, some purpose, your self-identity. And it could be that, you go to college and you pursue a degree and you work a 9 to 5, and you do this habitually and consistently. And at some point you start chasing something that you were told to chase. Maybe it could be money, maybe it could be climbing the corporate ladder, whatever it be, right? And at some point, maybe you start a family, and then you start to look behind you. What was left behind? All the people that you went to school with, your friends that you don't talk to anymore, your elderly parents now. Are we paying attention yet? And oftentimes, what happens with our parents is that we are so busy growing up, going through those stages in life, where when we finally find ourselves with our kids and then now their grandparents, we can see their age. We can see how they move slower than what we remember because we stop paying attention to them. We start paying attention to us now. And you said, the way we, get this connection is like, by creating that ripple effect within ourselves and for those around us. But something you said in the beginning was amazing. You said drugs weren't, doing it anymore. Well, what if love and connection isn't doing it, it anymore because we're not paying attention? Our world is so full of distractions. Our phone, like my phone is currently in the car right now because I don't want it.
Right.
I don't want it. Like I don't mind talking to people, but it is a distraction. I got an email, I got a text message, I got phone calls. I mean, no, there are certain days when I'm open to that. And there's certain days when, hey, I got other things that need my priority, my focus. But most people, and in our world today, they have that phone on the highest volume, on like all notifications on all of their social media. How can we start to focus on love and connection when we're so distracted with everything that's going on, and then also even our own life, because we feel almost obligated to interact with everything around us, everything we see, to have a say, but we don't have a say in our own personal and professional development. It's almost like we, leave it to Jesus to take the wheel, and we say, all right, whatever happens in life, this is what's going to happen, when we are the people that are going to be the main driver to get what we want. And that could be better health, better love and connection, but it's not going to happen if we don't take action. How can we start to help people see that this is a better alternative than, waiting until you're 65 and you can barely walk and you can barely breathe and your bones are falling apart? I mean, we have a problem right now.
Yeah, we do. We do. Boy, that was a mouthful. You nailed a lot. So, I think that how do you start? Well, you're right that the phone, it gives us the illusion of connection. Okay. Just like ultra processed food gives us the illusion of food, right? It's a food like substance and it's actually, to me, toxic waste. But I think it begins with dreaming. Now, many in my generation, I'm Generation X, you know, knowing what you really want, kids know what they want when they're young. They bug you. I want this, I want this, I want this. And most of the times that is shushed out of us by 3 or 4. Stop asking. We're not going to do it. And kids get suppressed, especially the Generation X. We just learned that we could not have what we wanted, right? We had to respond to what the people around us wanted, and we got really good at that. Okay, that was our survival strategy. So often when people come to me, they're in such physical distress that it's like alarm bells are already sounding. So backing up that train, the good news about that is they're very clear they don't want that. And so often accessing what you want, many people have trouble with that. I have trouble with that. Is if you could have anything in your world, what would that be? And so I get people to dream again and articulate out of their mouth what they want. So I get them to dream, okay? And what that does, that aligns the neurology to start engaging in that conversation, and the physiology will respond. But the hardest thing for many people is to dream that dream. I want health. I want to dance at my grandmother's wedding or my granddaughter's wedding. I want to travel and not have pain. So I think that's a really important first step, is to articulate what you want. Now, if you can say why, the why part doesn't really matter, but it starts to tease that out a little bit more. And again, it tells the brain we're going in this direction, right? So getting people to articulate their dream for themselves. And many of us are not wired to do much for ourselves. We are external servants. So often we may have to anchor it to dreaming for somebody else. I won't do this for myself, but I will do this for my grandbabies. I won't do this for myself, but I'll do this for my clients, right? And some of us have been kind of conditioned. Those were those survival strategies of being the servant. Often I see that with teachers, and I see that with healthcare providers, nurses, where we have been trained to be so reactive and receptive and responsive to the people around us. We can't even hear the internal dialogue or the internal chaos until it's so loud. And there is some kind of dysfunction that is available. So for me, that's where we start, is articulating our dream for ourselves, our future, our environment. What could it look like? And I play with it. I'm like, what could this be? What could this look like? Dream big. And so to me, that's where we start. And then we start, like I said, those 3 big buckets. The easiest part is eating well. And it ain't easy. It isn't easy. But it's a lot easier than fixing transgenerational trauma. Or, some of the medications that are causing just critical chaos in how they disrupt the system. But that's the thing. Eating is a great first step, is to start help people cleaning up those foundational nutrients. And the brain can't work without those nutrients. So you mentioned young people. For the last 2-3 generations, they've grown up nutrient deficient completely, where from the 80s on, young people's, what we fed and conditioned them to think is food is the Happy Meal and kids meal. In my generation, there was no such thing. It was the adult food in a smaller portion that always had a protein, starch, and a vegetable. But from the 80s on, kids are fed this thing called a kids meal, which often is chicken and fries, fried burger, mac and cheese, pizza. And as adults, they've just been conditioned that that's what humans eat and need to eat, right? And the reality is that's not what's going to populate our biochemistry. And so the brain doesn't work well. You start seeing anxiety, irritability, low concentration. That's a direct function of these low nutrient states. So kids have a hard challenge because the culture has fed them so poorly. Candy, reactive hypoglycemia, they just have these up and downs in their moods, and it's directly correlate to the sugar and or caffeine. And so these poor kids, they are self-medicating. They're medicating to try to have a different experience than this default terrible one that we've conditioned them all to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said something great early on. You said, health begins with the mama, the wife, the mom. And there was a statistic that came out, and I think it was like an overwhelmingly high number. It might have been 70 or 80%, where they say that, like the woman in the household determines the health of the entire family. So
Right.
The husband, the kids, everyone. And I found that to be astounding because I go to the gym all the time and I'm super healthy. And I can see it with my wife. If she's not being healthy, how I will fall out of health for a little bit, or my kid will find himself eating ice cream. And I'm like, wait, how did this happen? I'm like, oh, because she's doing it. And It's
Right.
not so much of she's the problem. It's,
No.
it's a cultural thing.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, we ate dinner. Let's get dessert after, right? And we just have to change it. So one of the things we do that is effective for us is we don't have much stuff in the house that is bad for us.
Good.
Because if it's available to you, like you can go reach for it, you will. It's there. Like if you went to the store and you bought some cake mix or something and you have a hankering for some cake, or you got some cookie mix or whatever, you're going to pop those things in the oven and you're going to say, okay, great, I have some cake and some cookies. This is not to say that you can't have cake and cookies, but there has to be some moderation. So one of the things I tell people early on, I'm like, listen, go in your pantry, go in your cabinets, figure out what is not healthy for you, learn how to read, the nutritional labels and see what is bad. And then from there, toss it out, or you can donate it, depending on the expiration date. Then start from scratch, figure out what you need. Are you going to go to the grocery store? What type of vegetables do you like? Do you like peppers? Do you like broccoli? Some people don't like broccoli. Maybe you want cauliflower. You figure out what type of vegetables you enjoy. Don't just get broccoli because, people eat chicken and broccoli to be healthy. Yes, it's true. But figure out what you want. And then only stock your house with things that are healthy. And then if you need something sweet, get some blueberries or some strawberries. Start eating more fruit. Now, fruit goes bad within a week. So you have to develop that habit of going every week to go to the grocery store. My kid eats, I don't know how much fruit. Like this little boy, he goes to probably like a week, at least $30 worth of fruit. And, most people say $30 worth of fruit, that's probably a lot of fruit. And it is. And, strawberries, like 3 pounds of strawberries a week. Blueberries, I don't know how many ounces or pounds they are. Blackberries, he loves them. Apples, oranges. We have these foods in front of us that are available to us, but we would rather get something quick. Oh, I'm gonna go get a frozen TV dinner, a frozen pizza. And the aspect of making our life a constituent of what's quick and what's available is going to be detrimental to us, because I understand when you get off from your 9 to 5, you might be exhausted. I understand that. But you just can't always stop at Panda Express and McDonald's and Taco Bell to feed your family. It's something that you have to commit to if you want a better health for your family. Figure out how to meal prep. Figure out if you can, give people different jobs if they're old enough. So if a teenager, teach them how to cook. And then so everyone has different responsibilities. I mean, there's so many alternatives for, eating healthy, and many people are just not thinking about what they can do because they only see about what's around them. So if they're hungry, for example, they'll go food near me. I don't, go on
Yeah.
Google food near me, and then they'll figure out what they want, or they'll spend all day trying to figure out, or, not all day, but a good portion of their time. Hey, what do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know what I want to eat. It's just same thing as if they're looking for a Netflix movie. They're like, I don't know what I want to watch. And people are so indecisive. Most of the time when they do decide, they make the wrong choice.
Everything you just said are fabulous strategies, and they're all, I love that for me, it is a foundational strategy to create an environment that doesn't isn't toxic, right? So I'm at a pharmacy and I would eat donuts every minute of every day if that's what works. So I have an unwritten rule, no donuts, right? Because I can't not do them. So I keep the environment around me as supportive as I can. Because when I'm stressed or when I'm in, having trouble with something, my primitive monkey brain, lizard brain will say, go get fuel. Now, when I was a primitive being, our ancestors were primitive being, and they had a hard day and they needed fuel, they grabbed the leaf, right? They grabbed what was available that would nourish them in that moment. But today, because of that 75 toxic waste, we're grabbing things with the illusion that it's actually going to populate and help our function. But the reality is it isn't. So, and everybody's different. So what's brilliant about what you said is in your family, you've created with you and your wife a culture that supports her. Now, the question is, are we asking too much of each other in our culture? Especially women. Women are having full-time jobs and then coming home and doing another full-time job as mama, right? There are things that mothers do inherently. Our brains just see things a little different. We are designed to see and anticipate and prevent threat. And we do that without even thinking about it, right? So the fact that we're asking in our culture women in that role to do 3 or 4 different jobs is part of the chaos. And it's part of why it's so difficult. And it's also something that other cultures don't do. Europe doesn't do it quite that way. They support the actual existence of their communities and their people very differently, and of mothers. I'm getting ready to go to Kenya this year to speak on food as medicine. And what's unique to that culture is it's a community that supports each other. It's just woven into it. So you would never have a mom existing alone in a society. And so back to that cultural conversation on the macro, there's a lot of things about our current world that is creating chaos. And you can see it in your own family. When everybody's tired, everybody's overworked, that's when the energy is not necessarily going to what we need to function. And that's why I'm a big fan of being prepared for that, because it's going to happen. I'm going to overwork. I'm going to have too much because of the nature of our world. So can I have my soup recipe ready to go in the refrigerator so that when I come home exhausted, I grab that, right? So a little bit of preparing for what we know is our life is going to throw at us, because we have a pretty good idea what our life is going to throw at. Not always. Sometimes life will just present you buckets of chaos, for sure. But in those moments, I always tell patients, eat the best you can. When you have no control over your life and there is serious unknowns, eat the best you can. That's the easiest dial to grab. And it's not easy. I'm not saying any of it's easy, but it is pretty concrete that you can impact that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about so many great things today. And I think this is a great place for people to begin, because they get to look at their life, look at their circumstance, and begin to, forward think is a good way to put it. Because many people, they focus on, the past, or maybe even a little bit of the present, but they don't look at 5, 10 years down the road. I mean, most of the clients that I'm speaking with, I'm like, okay, let's look at your 5, 10 year, 30-year plan. And they're like, wait, I don't even know what my 5-year plan is, let alone 10-year plan.
Your 5-minute plan, right?
I don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, let alone 5 seconds. So, many people are just struggling to find, purpose and meaning in life. And you do have to give yourself the vessel that's going to help you get to your goals and your dreams. If you are needing to fix yourself, your body, that's going to be the priority, and all your dreams and your goals are going to, be put on hiatus, or, they're just going to be dormant because you can't get to them. And it's not a hard fix, but it is a fix that you have to commit to. And the moment you can commit to yourself, investing in yourself, in better foods and better ideas, and enhancing your culture for your family, and then the community, and then maybe even the nation, then the world, it begins with you, right? Being that small ripple effect, as you said. So as we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words from you. So you can talk about anything, any books that are coming out, of course, tell us, please, and then tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, so this would be a great conversation. So I've got a new book out called Obesity, the Modern Famine. And it identifies, I've had a lifelong journey with obesity. I was 100 pounds at 5. I had a 350-pound grandpa during the Great Depression. So I've been studying it from my personal lens, but also that of a biochemist for 50 plus years. And I wrote a book about it because it's not about eating less and exercising more. I actually assert that obesity is a symptom of deficiency, profound deficiency. And I've identified about 24 deficiencies. And some of that is purpose, some of that is love, connection, safety, all those things, but as well as the biochemistry and food and supplements and nutrients and some of the negative effects on medications. So I encourage people to check that out. I've been very excited that people that are reading it, they don't tell me they love it. They tell me what they're eating now. They tell me that they did something with that information, and there are some complex concepts delivered in very simple terms, and people seem to be really embracing that information. So I'm very proud of that. I'd say if there was one thing that I would say to people who are wanting a new journey, my goal is that you have a great life, and I know health is foundational to that journey. You've got to create a team to support you, and I call it a Partners in Health team. You're on that team, a good coach or a good therapist, a physical therapist, a farmer. If you don't have a great hairdresser, you need one, right? But if you're putting any biochemistry in your body, you need a pharmacist. And you need a pharmacist that's focused on you not needing medications. And if you're taking medications, not needing more. And we do that by helping you manage, monitor, and optimize those chemistries. Now, ideally, none of us want to need that. And I don't want people to need medications. That's really my drive. But the reality is, because we live in a culture like this, 7 out of 10 Americans are on a medication and may appropriately be on that. So how do we utilize that the best way? If you are putting supplements in your body, you need somebody that can really vet those such that they are the right supplements and they are what they say they are. And so I encourage you to reach out. You can reach out to me, can reach out to your pharmacist and really ask them, develop that relationship, sit down, have an appointment. They're there to really help you optimize that. Unfortunately, in our current culture with insurance is really decimating our healthcare dollars. You can't even access healthcare unless you're sick and really sick. And that system is encouraged and paid on transactions. So the more transactions, the better. So if you really want to be well, this is upstream of the medical system. The medical system is designed to treat you when you're diagnosed ill. So a lot of this kind of investment is an investment in your function over time and hopefully optimizing that. So I hope that helps. And I would encourage people to reach out. DrKathySays.com is my website, DrKathySays.com. And I also have a TED Talk out there that is the same as the book, Obesity, the Modern Famine. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
And I'll toss all that in the description box below so people can easily find you. I think what we spoke about and then what you are working on, your books, your speeches, just trying to make an impact in the world is going to have a huge effect, because we are heading in a good direction. We just have to keep on going, because sometimes we can begin, think of it as a New Year's resolution. We begin very strong, and then we taper off, and then we fall off. We just have to commit to that long haul, complete that marathon of life, and longevity and health and happiness is all there for our taking. And I do have to agree with you. We had a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kathy, for coming on today.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.